So David, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your vehicle itself?
Yes, this is a 1970 AF Spyder. It was made for Colin Crabb, who was the Bernie Eccleston of the 1970s, a contemporary of Lord Hesketh and James Hunt fame. And Ronnie Peterson was Colin Crabb's lead driver, and he's actually test-driven this particular vehicle of mine when it was constructed. Colin was always keen on three-wheel Morgans. You notice this is three wheels, but Morgans, dare I say it, were notoriously unreliable. They had the Villiers engines or the Jap engines, and they were good for maybe 80 miles an hour, but they broke down a little bit, shall we say, particularly in the rain. So Colin's brief to his chief engineer, Alexander Fraser, hence the AF initials, this is called AF Spyder, was to construct him a car which is a la Morgan, but more reliable and faster. This was the prototype. It has a 1300cc MG engine, tuned by Oselli, who are still in business to this day. High lift cam on it, twin carburetors, and because of the power-to-weight ratio, it's capable of 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds, and it's allowed to accelerate an E-Type Jaguar, and a top speed of 135 miles an hour. Now, the only trouble is, as you can see, it's got wooden wings, quite literally, which are mud guards. So if you try to take it over 100 miles an hour, it tries to lift off. The aerodynamics are such. Now, it was tested in period by Motor Magazine, by Autocar, by Motorcycle News, and the public were they were raving over it, that a company was formed called Antique Automobiles by Colin, and a short series, limited production run of the AF Spyder was made, only 7, but in the production models they did away with these running boards and they put cycle wings a la Morgan, and therefore the front kept on the ground. And they went one better, they built 5 Grand Prix versions, which they fitted with a Shark supercharger, and those were capable of a top speed of 165 miles an hour and 0 to 60 in just under 5 seconds. That is motoring, particularly in the three-wheeler. You may remember the famous sketch from Fools and Horses, where David Jason drives a Reliant three-wheeler and he actually flips it. But that's a different configuration because you've got one wheel at the front and 2 at the back, and that's inherently unstable, whereas this you can throw around bends. And just a very quick story, a blast from the past. The journalist from Motorcycle News was testing this, and he was driving around a country road, and a tractor and trailer came out of a side of a field right in front of him. He had to swerve, and he went across a ploughed field in a big arc, came back through a fence, and carried on along the road. So without any ill effect on the car. So it's made out of marine ply, which they make racing yachts, seagoing yachts out of, sheathed in aluminium, and it's got a small chip out of the near side wing at the front. And the reason that is Colonel Crabb, who was the father of Colin that was made for, had a big stately home in Aberdeenshire. Long drive up to it, and he was driving down in the AF one day, great rate of knots, and as he always did, he was a Ferrari chap, and he hit a milk float at the bottom of his drive. The milk float was demolished, but the only damage to the AF was a small chunk you'll see out of the front. So that shows you how solid it is made. But of this, of all the cars I've had, MX RAF, I used to import them when I was stationed in Germany. Personal import. I've had Maseratis, Porsches and all sorts. This car gets more attention wherever I take it than any other car I've ever had. And 5 years ago it was invited to the Goodwood Revival by Lord March, and there's a photograph on the display board at the front of it being driven round the track by the maker, Alexander Fraser. And when we returned to the paddock, who should jump in but Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean. He was there with the famous Mini that he drives sitting on the roof and steering like that. And he's a car, he's rather like Chris Evans. He's a car mad, and he loved it. And I think he would have purchased it from me. But my wife, to sum up, says that it's staying in the family, and when I succumb, I should bury him in it.
Now, what do you make of this whole display here? I mean, there's so many vintage cars. Obviously, I picked yours out in particular with it being a very unique car itself with the three wheels, like you say. But what do you make of this whole display of vintage cars?
Well, they're I'm sorry, I have to correct you. They're post-vintage and classic cars, but there's different sort of timelines. But it's an excellent sort of cross-section, if you like, of mainly classics. And we've got another show winner, which is just over there, the Rover 90, which is a beautiful car. We've got a Alvis TA14, which is a great interest, a drop-head coupe across there, which is made by Car Bodies. And there's very few of those left on the road, sadly. We've got another, the Rover 90 is what's known as a P4 Rover. There's another one across the other side as well, so I think we've got two here today. We've got a couple of post-vintage cars from the 1930s. As a gentleman with a Morris 12, I think it is, behind me. He really enters into the spirit of things. He dresses up in 40s clothes. Plays 40s music through via an iPod, beg your pardon, through a little speaker, but it's very authentic, sounds good. There's a maybe 1937 Austin further down the road there, but you can see across the way there. That gentleman bought it fully restored. There's some people that have fully restored their cars here. But I was always taught the way to buy them is let somebody else do the work, because you can expend on that particular car, the Austin across there, the Austin Ascot I think it is, £12,500 was spent on it just in restoration materials, not including the man hours, and it would be worth £6,000 if it was sold now. So, let somebody else put the work and the cost in is my advice. Although with mine, I bought it directly from Colin Crabb, so I'm only the second owner, and it's done just over 7,000 miles from new. So more life in it than me.
So when you actually bought this, how much was it at the time, and how much would it be now if you had to actually sell it?
Very difficult to say. It was sadly Colin became very ill about 5 years ago. He made his money from getting collector's cars from all around the world, bringing them back to the UK, restoring them and selling them on. That's what Grubb staked his Formula 1 team, etc. But he had a vast collection, Fraser Nash's Ferraris. If you go on YouTube and you put in Colin Crabb, you'll still get a short film of him driving his red Ferrari around the Lincolnshire roads. When he decided to sell his collection because of his ill health, he entered this at H&H Auctions in Buxton, where I attended. Didn't meet its reserve, which I think was $12,000 at the time. Difficult to put a price on it because he'd had it from new. It was made for him by his chief racing mechanic. Didn't meet its reserve. After the auction, I had a coffee with him and I chatted to him, and I made an offer, and I paid him £10,000 for it. I wouldn't like to say what it'd be worth now. I've had several offers made, including once I brought it up here because I come to Brimstage, which is an excellent venue, by the way, and sadly not very publicised by Leverhulme Estates. And this is what all this event's about today, to try and bring to the public awareness Brimstage Hall and the facilities here, which are excellent. But I brought my car here quite regularly over the years, and there was a coach full of Japanese tourists who came a couple of years ago to visit the Brimstage Maze, and one of the kids, Japanese kids, ran over to my car, aged about 10, and he said, "Oh, is it a boat? Is it a plane? Is it a car?" You know, because of the unusual shape of it, etc. But it causes a great deal of interest wherever it goes.